Welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 184th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 639th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, August 27th, 2020. I am your host, Jerod Morris, and I hope I still remember what I'm doing. All right, let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Sunday when news broke that Indiana will hire Kenya Hunter to replace Bruiser Flint, who is off to join his old pal Coach Cal in Lexington. Yeah. Alas, Kenya Hunter comes to Indiana from UConn, where he had been an assistant under Dan Hurley. Prior to that, Hunter spent a handful of years at Nebraska under Tim Miles and at Georgetown, where he played a key role in recruiting and developing some of those teams' most notable players. Perhaps most importantly, Hunter has a track record with Archie Miller, having worked together at both NC State and Xavier, and even prior to that. And given the timing of Bruiser Flint's departure this late in the offseason and during a still ongoing pandemic, no less, it's hard to imagine that IU could have done better than Kenya Hunter. And that's not intended as a backhanded compliment. There are reasons to be really excited about this hire and even consider the possibility that it's an upgrade. In addition to Hunter's history with Archie Miller, he is known as a well-rounded coach who relates well with his players. In the aftermath of the hiring, there were a barrage of tweets like this one from Corey Evans of Rivals, quote, "An awesome hire for Indiana with Kenya Hunter, should help on the floor and along the trail, future head coach in waiting." Plus, at every stop, Hunter has helped to upgrade the recruiting. At Nebraska, for example, he was the lead recruiter on Glenn Watson, one of the only top 100 recruits the Cornhuskers have ever landed. If Hunter can help Archie Miller improve on the already strong inside-out recruiting foundation that has been rebuilt at Indiana, then it will help the IU program take the long-awaited next step. It's always tough to judge the impact of assistant coaching hires. We were all excited about Ed Schilling and Bruiser Flint when they were hired, but no one really considered it a major loss when either departed. And while we were all excited about Mike Roberts being hired, none of us really know yet what kind of impact he's having on the bottom line of winning. So we should approach analysis of this hire with some level of humility. What I can tell you is that the people with insider knowledge seem to think that Hunter is a really good fit with Archie Miller and will have a positive impact on the program. His track record certainly backs this up. And this late into the strangest college basketball offseason in memory, you can't ask for much more than that. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left,
he remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
You cannot outwork me.
Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
Well, Jerod, it's nice to have you back so I can just sit back and answer questions and not stress about all the buttons that we have to push. So welcome back. It's nice to have you back. Just getting excited as much as you can in these crazy sports to come be some number changes. Not a big deal. That doesn't make a huge difference in Indiana basketball, but you see names and numbers and heights and weights, and it just gives you a little bit of excitement about hopefully what's coming out. I also am thinking a little bit about, I like the fact that they're trying to find dates and times and places to get the season started, and hopefully, we don't have this mixed bag of who's playing and who's not playing, but we can have a college basketball season. I think it's really necessary in a lot of ways, and so I appreciate what seems like at least an effort to plan ahead and try to maximize what can be done in this situation. So I think that's a good thing. And then lastly, really proud of our football coach. I've been slow to really jump on the bandwagon, but what a tough thing to have your season canceled, and yet the approach is sharpen his axe and get the team better. Handling an adverse situation tells me a lot about a person, and I've gained a lot of respect in the last year or two about how he is team first, player first, and really helping these guys handle a tough situation. And I'm proud that Coach Allen is a coach at Indiana. So hopefully we can continue to talk schedule and things in the weeks to come.
All right. Well said, Coach. All right. And to my left or to my right, whichever direction we're on now.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the
Well, let me
answers.
quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
Held you in my womb for 9 months.
Ryan, what is your rant on the last week in, I don't know, anything?
That's a really interesting add to the end of that drop. Anyway, I think the big story is obviously Kenyon Hunter, as you alluded to, and I think that it's a great hire. And I think there were some other coaches suggested, and of course, they would have been great hires as well. But I think Kenyon Hunter is a guy who's going to fit what Indiana does really well. Has familiarity with Archie Miller, and obviously he's going to know about Indiana, and he's going to know what to expect when he comes here. But it's a guy who can do both things. A lot of times in coaching, you get a recruiter or you get a technical on-court guy. And it seems like everybody seems to think he's both. And so really a chance for him to move up the ranks as well, going from UConn to Indiana as far as visibility, and a chance for Indiana to sort of fill out the coaching staff with a guy who can do some different things for them, and a guy who has familiarity with Archie Miller. So he knows what he's getting into. It's not like a coach who's going to come in and be overwhelmed. He knows Archie. He knows about Indiana. He's ready to come in and it clearly is ready for that next step in his career. So I think it's a great hire, and I think that we'll see, how he does when he's here. But as far as on paper, this looks like a really good hire and fills out the coaching staff really well.
And he has, experience in the Big Ten too, which is nice.
Yeah. I mean,
by the way, how close are we to you just putting a volleyball up there and just talking directly to the volleyball?
You're so late on that joke. You're like 3 weeks late on that.
All right,
joke.
well, I haven't been
here.
around, so it's fresh. It's fresh content for me.
Oh, hopefully not. Hopefully I can get rid of this week. I don't know. I want it gone. I hate it all.
As I was telling you, my wife cut my hair. She did a good job. So it may be time to let Madeline take the shears to the hair.
Maybe I'll get desperate.
Maybe.
I'm already desperate. I want this gone. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to talk about this week. There's actually a lot of headlines this week, from potential dates to when the season might start to some recruiting stuff. So we're going to cover all that. Obviously, I've been away for a while. I have some questions, so I'm going to kick those questions to you guys, see if you have thoughts on them. And then you all have questions like you always do. And so in our final segment, we will answer your questions. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to all of that, a quick announcement. As always, please continue to support our friends at Homefield Apparel, homefieldapparel.com. You can use that promo code Assembly20 to get 20% off. Those guys are just blowing up if you follow them on Twitter. They're doing these new releases every weekend, adding a whole bunch of schools to the mix. So, I mean, if you have friends, family, maybe you went to a different school or, got a graduate degree somewhere else, like they're adding a whole bunch of schools. So go look there. Great stuff for gifts. Obviously, you can get all of your IU gear there. So, Coach, we've still got to work with them on getting the Purdue rant on a sweatshirt. So that's, They're a little busy right now, so I don't know if that'll happen. But it's definitely the most oft requested assembly call item. So see if we can ever make that happen. All right, let's talk Hoosier headlines. I think the most important one is a report from John Rothstein today. I think Matt Norlander also talked about this from CBS. But the most likely start dates for the season are either November 24th or December 4th. Which is interesting. Number one, just hearing about a potential start date for the college basketball season is great because it makes it seem a little bit more real, like it'll actually happen, somewhat close to on time. But what's interesting about that is in-person classes in Bloomington conclude on Saturday, November 21st. Classes don't resume again until Saturday, February 8th. So that is a big-time window of time there where the students won't be on campus. To almost serve as little de facto bubbles for some of these teams. But, Ryan, what did you think when you saw those dates? Obviously, that would push it back a little bit. Normally the season starts, maybe late the first week in November, around there. I think Indiana has a game against NJIT scheduled for like the 10th maybe of November, something like that. So some of those games might be lost. It would be a little late. Who knows what happens to Maui, but at least we've got a little clarity on when a date might happen.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm disappointed about is Maui, obviously. And I don't know how the tournament's going to handle that and what they're going to do with IU, if they're going to push them back 2 years or something like that, because there's already a field set for next year. So it's not like they could just move everybody back. That's already set. They'll probably, I would think, stack them on the back of the current one. That's obviously the biggest disappointment. That's a huge national tournament. Be a great place for those guys to showcase themselves early in the year. If that's not coming, then That's really a bummer for everybody involved. Bummer for the people who run the tournament too. That's their big deal every year, and to not have it one year is really a shame.
Is there any reason to think that that's going to happen? I mean, I've just been operating under the assumption that that's not happening.
I mean, the tournament has still said we haven't canceled yet, essentially, but that feels like it's coming. But they are maintaining, because here's the thing: is if things all of a sudden get better, they can't be caught blindside trying to throw the tournament together. So they're going to continue to act like the tournament's happening until they do cancel, which I think is, it can't be that far off, really. I mean, so yeah, I think that the dates for that make sense. The dates proposed, late November, early December seem to make sense, but we'll see what happens. Everything's up in the air right now. I mean, because we don't know what this is going to look like in a month and a half, and those could change. And we've seen with sports, everything's been very fluid. There have been cancellations, there have been pushbacks, every plan seems to have been, kind of pushed further out. We've seen it in baseball. One thing happens and suddenly 3 teams aren't playing for 2 weeks. So we really don't know what's going to happen at all.
The latest episode of the CBS On College Basketball podcast with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish, they talk about this some. And one of the ideas that they talked about that is being floated is potentially playing the conference games first and actually using that window when there's no students to get a whole bunch of the conference games in and then try and do a non-conference schedule later in the season. Because, obviously starting it later is going to really hurt the non-conference, but the selection committee doesn't want to have anything to do with trying to seed a tournament where there's no non-conference games to try and kind of compare leagues and compare teams. So they're trying to figure out if maybe delaying those until later and doing the conference games early might work. Coach, I have no idea if that'll actually happen, but I just thought that was kind of an interesting hypothesis for how they might try and get a full season in with as many non-conference games as possible.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to compare teams if you just go to a conference-only season. But I do understand that there is a time period there in November or late November, December, January to get some games in, hopefully, in that bubble situation. And so it makes sense to get your most important games done at that time and then try to go elsewhere. But, yeah, there's got to be an alternate way to select teams if you're only going to go to conference than what has traditionally been the bracket work and the bracketology work that's been done in the past. And that's all in play, I would imagine.
Yep. All right. Well, Richie has really the perfect segue to our next topic here. He says Ryan is looking more and more like the Geico caveman. Maybe Galen can get him some name, image, likeness money. And that is an appropriate comment because Indiana has launched a name, image, likeness task force. It is the first of its kind, I believe. And in fact, yes, the first sentence of the press release says Indiana University Athletics has announced the formation of a first-of-its-kind name, image, and likeness task force, further solidifying its position as a leader in a new and burgeoning era of intercollegiate athletics. And it's really Indiana once again kind of taking the lead on this athlete-first approach that they've had, which I think is smart. I think is going to pay dividends down the road, and so I like seeing them do it. But for fans of this show, for fans of the Indiana podcasting space, I think the most notable part about that announcement was that Galen Clavio is on the Name, Image, Likeness Task Force, which is fantastic. It's also his birthday today, so happy birthday, Galen. But, great to see that, but also, just really smart because Galen knows his stuff, is as smart and insightful about this stuff as anyone, and obviously his work with the Cuban Center and what that will, I think, allow, students to be able to help athletes, with graphics and different things. I just really like where Indiana is going with this. Like, you can wait and say, well, we hope this doesn't happen, yada, yada. You know what's smart? Like, see the writing on the wall. See what's going to happen 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever. Be forward-thinking and make a move that puts you out in front of it. And Indiana has done that again. They did it with mental health. They've done it with a lot of stuff, the Student-Athlete Bill of Rights. And so whether you agree with those things or disagree with them on their merits, this is where college athletics is going. So it's smart if you want to succeed to, be preemptive about it, be proactive about it, and get there. And so I applaud this just like I applaud some of their other moves. Ryan, what was your reaction to seeing this, other than congrats, Galen?
That was the first thing, of course. A friend of ours in an important position. We've got to find a way to profit off of this. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But I think that it's great, and Indiana has been proactive on this front and has been very athlete centric and promoting the rights of athletes for years now. This isn't a new thing. This has been years, and whether it was guaranteeing 4-year scholarships or, allowing players or guaranteeing the full scholarship. I guess it would be 5 years. Allowing players to come back and finish their educations even years after they've left. I mean, some of these things have been very athlete centric, and this is another one that's just an example that they are putting athletes first. And that's really should be the point of an athletics department and a university that has sports at its core. Put the athletes first. I mean, yes, they're students and they need to get their educations and all of that stuff, that we need to encourage that as well. But this is also, a nod to the fact that these are not average students. They have different needs and different, their different rules govern them. Let's be real. And to encourage this kind of thing is a positive, I think. And I'm proud of my alma mater for doing it.
Which current player do you want us to pay to do your introduction for the assembly call once we can pay them?
Boy,
it's got to be Trayce Thompson, right?
Yeah, I think it's Trayce. Yeah, probably. See, if Juwan Morgan was still around, it'd be Juwan Morgan, because he got that voice, that really deep, announcer voice. But yeah, I'd say Trayce. Sure, I'm on the Trayce Thompson bandwagon.
Coach, what were your thoughts when you saw this?
Just echoing what has been said, I think it's best to get out in front of this as it's new to athletes. I think it also benefits. Indiana basketball has a niche where it can really, the coach is going to have to recruit for a relationship, and the young man's going to have to come play basketball in Indiana first. But if it's a close decision and you're really on the forefront of this, that could really be help. And I also think it helps for the other athletes and other sports. If Indiana's out in front on this to get your softball, your volleyball players that see this comparing to other schools. And I think it just helps the university as well as helping the individual, and I'm all for it. I've come around a lot in the last few years, especially with the amount of money that's being played, and add to it to get rid of the amateur thing so you can bubble these guys up and have a season and let's move forward and have college basketball. The way it has been in the past, it's just been under the table, all this stuff. Let's get it on top of the table and move forward. But Indiana's done a lot of good things, and kudos to all who have had their hand in it for athletes over the years.
Other notes, the new roster was released. Trayce is no longer number 4, as he gives that to Christian Lander. Trayce is now number 23, which was vacated by Demezi Anderson's departure. If you don't know the freshman numbers, Anthony Leal will be number 3 in honor of all the three-pointers that he will make. Lander, number 4, Jordan Geronimo, number 2, Trey Galloway, number 32. And I thought it was interesting, Joey Brunk is 10 pounds heavier. Trayce Thompson is 7 pounds lighter. Tend not to put too much stock into that stuff. I guess the only note I would have about Joey Brunk being 10 pounds heavier is, hopefully that's the right kind of weight and he's able to carry it nimbly for some of the hedging that he's going to have to do. But I trust with Cliff Marshall's program that it's the good kind of weight. So I thought that was interesting. And then Blake Wesley announced his top 12, and Indiana was in it. So we made it, the top 12.
It's like
along with Grand
That's not really narrowing it down, Blake.
It is not, but good to see that. And look, I jest, let the high school kids kind of have their fun with the announcement and all that stuff. But Indiana in the top 12, so I wouldn't read too much into that. It feels like Indiana's kind of whatever the final mix is of 2, 3, 4, however many schools it is. It feels like Indiana's in there. So now we just wait for his announcement. So before we move to segment 2, Coach, did you have any thoughts on the Kenya Hunter hire that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think it's we just can read the bios and what other people say until we see the product on the floor. And sometimes you don't even see that. A lot of assistant coaches behind the scene, how comfortable do they help the coach? The scouting that they do, that might be seen, if they do better in the games that they have scouted. But he has experience, and I think at Indiana, you don't want to really hand it over to a new guy that has limited experience, because recruiting and on-court coaching is so important. And to get a guy whose resume is what it is, I think it says a lot about Archie and says a lot about Indiana. And so I think it's on the face of what we know, it's a good hire. And as long as Archie's comfortable, that's the main thing, because you got to have cohesiveness in that staff of working. And a lot of the good things that assistant coaches bring are in the office, behind the scenes, that really aren't easy to see.
And I highly recommend a piece that Zach Osterman wrote for the Indianapolis Star. He interviewed Tim Miles, who coached with Kenya Hunter at Nebraska, and Isaac Copeland, who Kenya Hunter recruited to Georgetown and then brought over to Nebraska. And, I mean, they were effusive in their praise. Like, you don't often see assistant coaches get this level of praise. But it was essentially – like, the gist from Tim Miles was essentially like, this is a 5-tool coach. Like, he's a good recruiter. He relates well with players, good scouting reports. Like, doesn't really have a weakness. So it's not – I think it's easy to look at this and say, oh, they brought in a recruiting guy, maybe to be like an East Coast recruiting guy because they got him from UConn, this, that, and the other. Like, it really feels like this is a well-rounded coach that's going to be able to bring a lot to the staff based on what you see. So good news all around as far as that goes, and hopefully – now, that hasn't been officially announced yet either, so I assume that they'll do that at some point soon. Who knows what the hang-up there is. But hopefully he gets to Bloomington soon and enjoys it because it's a great city, as we all know. All right, coming up, I've got some questions. I've been away for a while, but that hasn't stopped me from thinking about IU hoops and engaging in texts and tweets about IU hoops, so I want to discuss some questions that have been on my mind. We'll do it next. Stick with us. All right. Hello, everybody. Good to see you out there. Thank you for all the kind words in the chat mob. I appreciate it. I don't think this week, signals I'm going to be back every week, but I am trying to come on every opportunity that I get. So it's fun to be back here. I miss it when I'm not here.
You really? Because you haven't been coming back very often.
Well, I come back as often as I can. I do. Man, I'm just ready for some basketball. What a week. What a week. This is one of those weeks, again, where coming on, it's like, man, there's so much going on. Should we be talking about, like, the random Indiana basketball stories that we're going to be talking about for 90 minutes? But, yes, of course, because it's nice to have a diversion from some of the real-world stuff that's going on, which I don't really think I can add a whole lot of insight to, except just to say, I don't know. I don't know. Something needs to change so this stuff stops happening, but I certainly don't have the answers to it.
No.
No one does.
So
I'm going to get a water real quick.
Okay. What will get better ratings? This show or the RNC?
You're instigating now. Now that you're back, you're instigating.
I'm just
you're digging. You're digging for drops.
Hey, I got to be very efficient with my time, Oh, Kent said Coach Hunter's already in Bloomington. Okay, well, he's there.
Nice.
Well, there we go. There we go. Okay, so that was 21 minutes, 28 seconds.
You talk about me while I was gone or what?
No.
No.
Just kidding.
Man. All right. Anything interesting happening in your guys' lives the last couple weeks?
I turned 40.
Well, yeah, you did turn 40. You're Calbert Cheney.
Hey, happy birthday. That's right.
Yeah, Saturday.
Do you have anything exciting planned for your Calbert year?
No, because there's nothing to do. So my two buddies, Gabe and Jeremy, you guys have met.
Yes.
We had planned to do something because we're all turning 40 this year, and obviously that got thrown out the window. But yeah, so we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Just delay it until it's a better time,
What? We went out, and Madeline took me out to dinner for my 40th.
That's good.
It was nice. She's in the background. She's in the background, like, you did something nice. I'm like, yeah, okay, yes, we did. We did something very nice.
See, we got a comment. We got a comment that said, "Yikes! I need to stop supporting liberals." See, my joke was not actually a political joke. It was a joke that no one's watching the conventions, the Democratic convention or the Republican National.
Yeah, the ratings are way down.
While you were gone, my joke was, "What will get better ratings, this show or the RNC?" Yeah. It was not a political joke.
No, everyone.
Literally, no one's watching these conventions.
Yeah, and people don't watch. They're streaming. They're not watching stuff live anymore, guys. That's a general joke.
Brett is watching it. I mean, I know some people are watching it.
Yeah, of course. It was a joke, man. Relax. We don't do politics here.
Not usually. Not usually. All right, let's talk basketball. Let's talk some hoops. Here we go. Speaking of Juwan Morgan. Okay, here we go.
Hi, this is Juwan Morgan. What's the only thing better than getting IU's first triple-double in 47 years? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Juwan. Playoff starter, Juwan Morgan, right there. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcasts or watch those replays and see all the between-segment banter, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. And obviously, I have been gone for a little while, but as I mentioned before, it doesn't mean I have stopped thinking about IU basketball. So I just want to run a couple questions by you that I've been talking about with, some with you guys and some on other text threads and just kind of kicking around thinking about. And the first question is, what is the level of heat that is on Archie's seat once the season begins? Because, we haven't talked a lot about this, obviously, with, no games and just not a lot going on and the uncertainty of the season. And in part because it still seems to me, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but from all the fans that I interact with, I sense still a general feeling of optimism among fans and a general feeling of satisfaction with the direction Archie has taken the program, a general feeling of confidence among many, not all, but among many, that he's the right guy and has this on the right path and things are going to start, going a little bit better. But at the same time, I notice with myself and with certain people I talk to, kind of an undercurrent of latent impatience that could bubble to the surface if this team struggles in Archie's fourth year. Because, even though there is kind of this feeling of, okay, things are going in the right direction, I don't think any IU fan would say that the results over the first 3 years have been satisfactory. Yes, we probably would have made the tournament last year, but it remains, Archie Miller hasn't coached a tournament game. We haven't been competitive in the Big Ten. He's lost more Big Ten games than he's won. And so, Coach, I'll start with you. What happens if Indiana comes out of the gate this season, 1-2? And we kind of see more of the same stuff, and they're kind of not playing well. Like, do you think there's enough built-in goodwill with Archie to kind of weather some of that early on, or do you think this is one of those things where it's like people are feeling okay now, but we hit a little bit of turbulence once the games actually start, and since it's his fourth year, patience is going to go very quickly? Like, what do you foresee? What do you guess?
Yeah, I actually see two different levels. I think the fans, I would say lukewarm, because they want to see that success. And again, if you start out with playing conference, it depends on who you draw and where you're playing. You could get off to a tough start. And I think fans will start to become a little bit more heated towards Archie if a good start isn't on the horizon. As far as Scott Dolson and the athletic department in the middle of this situation with a year that's not normal, I would say it's not cool because you have to win at Indiana. But I think there's a lot more leeway from Scott Dolson and the athletic department than there are from fans. Now, whether that gets to the donors or whatever and heats up, this is a year he's going to have to win. And it's just you feel for him because, there's been all kinds of these secondary things each year that have happened that have kept a few wins off the board. Well, now if you open up at Michigan State and follow it up by playing Wisconsin at home, you just get off to a tough start. I mean, the Big Ten's tough. So I think there's two different – the fans are going to be more impatient than the athletic department going into this year, in my opinion.
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think last year ended on some positives, and then you saw – I mean, especially, the fact that they got to win their last game in a blowout, that – led a lot of people to be sort of like, hey, they were really playing well at the end, even though the loss to Wisconsin the game before was kind of disappointing. They got to finish on a high note. And I think that is effective.
Big Ten tournament champs, baby.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and they played really well in that game. That was really impressive. It was like putting it all together, and you're like, oh, I want to go see them play another game. And they were supposed to play Penn State, and then the season got canceled. And they'd beaten Penn State before. And so you thought, oh, well, they could, do this. And, but the thing that people, looking back, you kind of forget, they had that disappointing game at Illinois where they really had a chance to win it late and didn't. And there were some bad calls at the end that kind of screwed that up. But before that, at Purdue, they played really poorly. They did win at Minnesota at home, but going down the stretch, you saw glimmers of hope and then down to, well, they ended on a glimmer of hope. And I think that that's really affected a lot of people's view. And they were going to make the tournament is another thing. You finish 20-12, you get to the 20 win mark, but you're below 500 in conference. So there's sort of this up and down thing with last year. Now, if you look at the first 2 years compared to the third year was demonstrably, in my opinion, better. And so you've seen a slow sort of growth from the program. And I think that's why people are optimistic. That, and again, the last time we saw them on a floor, they won by 25. Don't tell people the fact that Nebraska was missing like 5 players, but
and their coach was dying on the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, but still, the way Indiana played on the floor, they earned that win. So I think that's why there's some optimism, is that they finished well. And they were clearly going to make the tournament. They were in, I think, every bracket projection at the end. They might have been out of 1 or 2, but those were the crazy people. So I think that's why there's optimism, But at the same time, if there's another stretch in the season where they lose 4 in a row winnable games and come out flat in games and don't play well and get run off the floor by people they shouldn't be run off the floor by, yeah, the seat's going to get hot again. But I think right now people have confidence. I think they look at getting Christian Lander. They look at the recruiting class coming in. They got Trayce Jackson-Davis to come back for another year. I mean, there is optimism around the program. And then the next recruiting class, it's shaping up to at least be decent. I think that they're looking at the momentum that the program has built over these 3 years and the players they have and thinking, okay, if everybody's healthy, big if, but if everybody's healthy, this can be a good team and it can build to an even better team the next year.
There's a couple things that first of all, I'm very optimistic. As you guys know on this show, I really like Archie, and I think patience for him to get his guys in consistently to play the way he wants to play, I think we'll be very happy with him. But I'm also realistic. You got to play better on the road. The performances on the road, if you're going to lose on the road, be very competitive on the road, and Indiana hasn't. And then you got to play consistently through the season. The 11 game losing 11 out of 12 in year 2, and then last year, 5-3, and then you lose 4 in a row and win 1 and lose 4, 2 or 3 more. That is just draining and not what Indiana basketball is. Tons of reasons that we can go over why that happened, but it just can't continue. Those are areas where he's going to have to get better, or the seat will get warm in a hurry.
Yeah, I just have the sense that, obviously, like in the moment, fans have been pretty impatient with Archie, but I think overall most fans have been extremely patient with him given the results through 3 years. And I worry that if they struggle out of the gates, there could be a bit of a correction where there's going to be maybe more impatience than you would expect early in the 4th year, because it's like, hey, this is the 4th year already. Like, let's go. And the difference between this year and the last couple of years is there have been some buffers for Archie. That first year, hey, it's the first year. You're turning an offensive program into a defensive program. The second year, all the injuries and, just all that stuff with, how much Duran was out and all these guys are injured and so that was talked about a lot. And then, last year, different stuff as well. You've got, personality conflicts maybe with certain players. Well, now none of that is there. Justin Smith is gone. Devontae Green is gone. If Indiana struggles, Indiana fans are not going to pin it on Al Durham, you know what I mean, as the senior. Like, everything is on Archie now. And so that's why I think there's more pressure, and the patience shown when Indiana struggles for the first time next year is going to be interesting. And part of that may just be when the struggle comes. If they come out of the gates well and you're, 9-1 and then you lose a couple games, that's different than if you're just 1-2 and struggling early. So it's just something to watch. And I guess my other question is, what Big Ten coaches are obviously on a hotter seat than Archie heading into this season? Like Richard Pitino, I think you would put in that category. Brad Underwood, you could probably put on par with Archie. Like, he has a better team theoretically this year, but that means expectations are higher. Fran McCaffrey, you could probably put up there because he's been there for a while and now he's got to deliver with this good team. Is there anybody else that you guys would consider on par with those guys? Those are probably the hottest seats in the Big Ten, right? Or am I missing anybody obvious?
Oh, you're muted, Coach.
Is Chris Collins on the hot seat?
He's got to be, right?
Yeah, he's just struggled
it just
for
depends on the
years after taking that
expectations.
team. Yeah.
Sorry, Michael Dugan, but I just wasn't really thinking about Northwestern. But
it's not.
yes,
it depends on what the expectations are there. If the expectations are to be mildly competitive, sometimes then Chris Collins probably has a very secure job. But
hot seat, I'm not sure, but pressure is McCaffrey.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on McCaffrey.
If he can't win with this team and his team's played defense and he has a couple explosions, anger explosions, I think Iowa might get really tired of that quick.
He seems well suited to dealing with pressure, though. So I'm sure it'll all go fine.
It's Mr. Calm. Yeah. It's like I always think he's taking like 3 Xanax before a game. You just see that guy on the sideline.
Okay, so next question is, and I've debated this with several people. If you could snap your fingers and guarantee one of these developments, which one do you think provides a bigger boost to IU? Either Trayce Thompson becomes a credible outside shooter or Jerome Hunter becomes a credible defender of 3s and 4s. Which one would be more important?
What was the first one? I'm sorry.
Trayce Thompson becomes a credible outside shooter to the point where defenses have to respect it and it alters the gravity a little bit of the defense.
I think it's Trayce, no question.
And now you can debate which one of these is more likely, certainly, but I'm saying just
I'm saying that one
helps.
helps more.
Yeah.
That one helps more because it spreads the offense out. I think, and it opens things up.
Unless you can say that more minutes will go to Jerome because he can prove that he can guard and already is a better 3-point shooter and stretch the floor the same way because he's getting more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, credible defender is different than a really good defender. Like Trayce Thompson's a difference-making defender. I don't think Jerome Hunter's ever going to be that. So that's maybe the difference. But, I don't know. It's interesting because, I mean, those two guys are so important. And their ability to do those two things is going to matter so much this year.
I'm going to go outside the box. It would be great if both happened.
Well, sure.
I was going to say that.
That'd be great.
I saw it in your face.
Joey Braun can
laughing
catch ball screens. Trey Galloway can make threes. Christian Landers, 215 pounds of pure muscle.
It's all going to happen. Awesome. It's all going to happen, baby. This is our year.
Hey, it's the pandemic offseason. We don't know when the season's starting, so let's just be hopeful.
So somebody was talking about
everything's possible
with the shortened season or whatever, and they were talking about the Padres. Padres aren't going to win a World Series this year, but they're competitive for the first time in forever. They said, would you if they won a World Series for the first time in this season, would you celebrate it the same way as once? 100%. I'm celebrating it like it's a normal year. Like it's every
team's dealing with the same thing.
If it's if IU wins a national title in his shortened season, I'm celebrating it like it's as legit as the other 5 banners. Like,
Absolutely.
I mean,
you're damn right.
Yeah. Like I that was a conversation somebody had the other day. Just like, what would you really, consider it as equal? Like, yeah, absolutely it is. I think it might actually be harder because of everything that's going on. But
Brett in the chat said things that we deserve both. And for what's gone on in a few years, even some of the up years with the struggles we had off the court and some other things. Yeah, I think IU's about ready to catch some breaks. They need both.
They are.
Good breaks. Lucky breaks, just to be specific.
You're saying break around this team is bad.
Yeah.
My bad. My bad.
So let me flip that question then. Which one do you think is more likely? Because, we've talked about this Trayce theoretically being a 3-point shooter because we saw some of it in high school. We haven't seen him take many in college. He hasn't seemed comfortable. And at what level would he actually have to make them for defense to actually say, okay, we've got to respect this out here and, potentially go out there leaving Trayce open or leaving some driving lanes open? Because that's the other question is, that's probably always going to be kind of the part of the offense that defenses will choose to kind of give up. So I don't even know how good he would have to be from 3-point range to change that. But which one do you think is more likely?
I think Trayce. I like his form. I think he's just got to have confidence in the green light from the coaching staff on pick and pops. Boy, if you could get him to pick and pop, that would be great. I like his form. I think his growth from where he's at to where he needs to be a 33, 34% shooter is a lot less than the growth that Jerome needs to be a credible defender. I think he could be a below average or at least an acceptable defender, but he's got to grow more to be a credible defender the way you asked the question.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Jerome is we saw flashes last year. We were like, oh, he looks good defensively, for stretches of games. But to be able to do it for a 40-minute, whatever he plays, 30 minutes max, is going to be difficult. And that might take a few years. That might take not this year, but next year. And I think Trayce really is not that far off with his shot. Now, will it happen this year? I don't know. But I really did not think he was that far off with his shot last year. Now, again, the other thing is, how many is he going to shoot? Is he going to shoot 40 in the season, 50? Because last year, what did he shoot, like 10? or something like. I mean, he really didn't shoot many.
Not many at all.
And is he all of a sudden just going to start gunning them as he's hitting them? It doesn't seem like that's his nature, but he can certainly. I mean, we've seen him make them in the past, so I think it's certainly Race is the answer here.
Yep.
But I also think that there are stretches where Jerome can be a credible defender. I don't know about against fours in the post, but certainly on the floor, we saw him move his feet pretty well at times last year.
What game was it where Race it was on the right wing, if I'm remembering. It was one pass, no thought, catch, shoot, three, somewhat guarded. It's like early in the Big Ten season. I'm like, okay, he's not even thinking about it, and it was nothing but net. And then later in the season when he got more run, it seemed like he was wide open, and then he was maybe told not to shoot. Where early on, he just got in and let it go.
He had a couple from the top of the key where he thought about it. You know, he caught it out there and thought about it and missed it. It's again, his shot form is not bad, and he's got to also translate that to the free throw line. Like he's got to start making his free throws consistently, because his form is there. It's just a matter of repetition and focus. I mean, and I don't think he doesn't focus. I think it's the repetition part of it.
By the way, I looked it up. Kenya Hunter, when he played at Duquesne, shot 35% from downtown, 74.4% from the free throw line. He was a guard, averaged about 4 assists per game. Not saying that that's going to, translate. Obviously, he played a while ago in the mid-90s, but any good shooting we can get in the program from wherever it comes from, I'll take it. So, maybe that'll be something that can rub off. Okay, last question. We've got a couple minutes to talk about this, so we'll hit it real quick. Does seeing Juwan and Romeo getting minutes in NBA playoff games as rookies, Juwan's been starting, Romeo's played a little bit, does it change at all your perception of Indiana's underwhelming team performance during their one season together in Bloomington, now that we're more than a full season removed from it? Because I kind of found myself at one point, I was like, man, you got 2 guys playing in the NBA playoffs and couldn't even – couldn't break a 11-game losing streak. Couldn't make the NCAA tournament, huh? That's
I think,
and again, in the context, we remember all the reasons why it didn't happen. But now, as you get further removed from some of the nuance of it, I just wonder if that's been a thought in anybody's mind, because it did cross my mind.
I think you can't consider that without considering the situation around the team and how radically different the system was than the system from the year before. Now, if those guys have both been on the team under the previous system with the rest of the players who had been through the previous system and they didn't have to do this radical shift, maybe you look at it and you say, but they were, tearing up the foundation and rebuilding it, and you're expecting like the house to look nice.
But I guess that's my point. Do we make too many excuses looking back on that season where the bottom line is you had 2 NBA players, you should be able to be more competitive?
No, because we were close to it and saw what was going on. I mean, there were times where they didn't know what they were doing offensively or defensively. They were trying to run the pack line with guys who had never run it before and were forgetting their assignments half the time. I mean, and then the offense was, at times it would look really smooth and at times it would look just dead. And they relied on Romeo too much at times, and they relied on, Juwan too much at times. And Romeo also had a messed up wrist, and there was was it his thumb or his wrist he messed up? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like a ligament. I mean,
yeah. So I mean, he was hurt and couldn't shoot, and they didn't respect anybody's jump shot, and there were so many issues with that team. Having 2 players isn't enough, I don't think. And those guys performed all year. It's not like they struggled. Those guys performed. It was the rest of everybody else not fitting the system and not performing to a high enough level. That's my take on what happened. I don't know.
2 things.
We were close to that team and we saw, it's hard to just say like, oh, they had talent, they should have been good.
Anytime you look back and now see 2 guys in the NBA, you're like, man, that should have been better. I think that's a natural way to go. But also it's a credit to those 2 young men too, because Juwan wasn't an NBA player when he graduated. He had to work his way through the G League and work hard and figure out the NBA game. And to some extent, Romeo, too, for being a lottery pick, he was down in the G League for a while. And
that also has to do with the team that drafted him. Let's be real.
Right. So it's not like he went in right away into a starting lineup or anything like that. But those 2 men really worked hard at the pro level with pro people, working them out, learning that game as well. But then going back to what Ryan said, the game of basketball is a guards game, and it pains me being a big guy, but it's a guards game. And you need multiple guards to stretch the floor, to run the fast break, to handle the ball. And we just saw it, that we had 2 guys there, 2 NBA players who in college needed to score at the rim. And they didn't expand their game like they have now a little bit more in the NBA. But it's a guards game, and that's why this year, again, I'm a little happier about IU because we have more guards that can do things and make less mistakes as guards.
One last thing, I think it's worth noting, it's something that they both got from being at IU, is the fact that the reason they're both playing, anybody can play offense at the NBA level. Anybody can score. Anybody can hit jump shots, whatever. Those guys are that talented. The reason those two guys are playing is because of defense. They both play hard, tough defense. Romeo Langford has become an excellent defender in the NBA. He's not playing major minutes, so he's not showing up in some of the statistical categories. But when he's on the floor, and Brad Stevens has noticed it because he's putting him against good players. And both of those guys learned that defense from playing under Archie Miller and got better on defense playing under Archie Miller. So you have to understand the reason these guys are having success is because they played in that system and played on that team. That team was flawed fundamentally. And so it's just hard to look back and say like, oh, they should have been great. Those guys gained something for being on that team, and they're starting to show it now more and more.
They should have been great. They just maybe should have stuck
I'm
so
just,
bad.
colloquially great.
I know. But your point about the defense is a good one. And Romeo's defense was really good at times at IU, and it went unnoticed too often.
So, well, and his reputation coming in was they didn't play a lick of defense too. You know, and
he took some games off, but there were some games where he was really engaged defensively.
I mean, it was and you're right, he did take some games off, and that's I think less on Romeo and more just being a freshman. And it's something where he had never had to try on that end of the floor before to be successful, and so the transformation's been pretty great, and that's why he is where he is, and that's why Juwan, in the G League where they play no defense. That guy was playing defense, and that's what earned his call up.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for helping me think through those questions, guys.
The team also couldn't shoot for a lick.
I want a team that can shoot again so badly.
I know, me too.
All right. Coming up in our third segment, we will answer your questions with whatever time we have left, including one from Patrick about which one-on-one battles we would focus in on if we could attend practice and watch. It's a fun question. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Alrighty.
Here's an interesting thing about Romeo's defense. I heard through the grapevine that he really struggled learning the team concept while at IU, and it took a long time for them to get him to understand. And what he learned, he definitely took to the Celtics. And the NBA is actually now going to a little more pack line concepts. Yep. I saw
stop
that the
drives.
Other day. Yep. Yeah, to stop drives. And so then he's, you can't. It's so easier for athletes too when you don't have classes to go in and work on your game in areas that are deficient. And I'm sure Brad Stevens everyone's saying, you want to play, you got to start guarding. And that gets
Stevens is very defensive focused.
Yeah, he's very defensive focused, and so that's where the light bulb has to turn on. And Romeo's a sophomore basically in college too in his development.
No, and look, it's rare that people focus on defense in the NBA these days because it's such a wide open offensive game. It's not what it was in the 80s and 90s, and even early 2000s. You would see lower scoring games. Now everybody can shoot, everybody can score, whatever. If you can play defense and contribute offensively, you're a unicorn. I mean, why OG is having success in Toronto because of that. He can shoot a three, he can score inside, he can back cut, he can do those things, but he also plays defense. And
you know what other question I thought about the other day? This may be a ridiculous question, and it may just show how little I really follow the NBA. But if Victor Oladipo and OG Anunoby were both on the open market this offseason, who would get the better contract?
Victor.
You think it would still be Victor even with the injury?
Yeah, he's shown he can be a star when he's healthy. I mean,
right, but that's what I mean. But with the injury, you still think he would over OG?
Yeah, I think he would. Yeah. I think it'd be closer with the injury. I think it'd be closer than many would think, but I think it's Victor for sure. Yeah. Cause he's also a guy who has shown that he can be the man and take the pressure of being the first shot. OG's a supporting cast guy right now. Do I think he can elevate? Yeah. But I mean, you're not going to see OG taking the ball at the end of a game up top 1-on-1 and taking someone to the basket to score a winning basket. Victor does that all the time. So
what if OG Anunoby and TJ Leaf were on the open market at the same time? Sorry, Pacers fans. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't understand that. Didn't understand it.
No, definitely not. All right, we got about 5 minutes and 35 seconds
Oh, that's
for
true.
this segment. So we'll hit Patrick's question. Yeah, we'll hit those other ones. Okay. Cool. Let's do this. Actually, we got about 40 seconds. We can start at the top of the hour. You want to tell us an interesting story for 30 seconds, Ryan? Come on, I know you got something. This is your role here. You don't host.
I haven't been doing anything for 6 months,
You're supposed to have
Jerod.
content when we need it.
I haven't been doing anything for 6 months. What do you want?
Except tweeting about the Padres.
Yeah, which has been awesome. Did you see that today?
Padres White Sox World Series. It's happening.
That would be fun.
James Shields Classic.
Oh, that'd be a great. We can create a trophy that's just a picture of James Shields pitching, split his uniform down the middle.
Yeah. Wonderful. Would be wonderful.
How was he for the White Sox, by the way?
Yeah, let's go into the next segment. Here we go.
Hey, this is Deron Davis. And what's the only thing better than dominating a Duke big man in the post? Is celebrating with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Hall call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Deron. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis, which will resume whenever the games resume again. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. All right, guys, time for the mailbag. All of these questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com/community, which Coach has just all kinds of fun stuff happening in there. Coach is just becoming the community leader extraordinaire there inside the community, so stay tuned for some news on that. But here's a fun question from Patrick. Well, actually, we'll start with Brian's question first. This is when originally it was going to be me, Ryan, and Andy hosting the show. Andy had something come up, so he wasn't able to do it. But he said, is this the first time the original three have been together since the virus ended the season? And I think it might have been, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think we did one.
Did we do one?
I think we did one this summer.
Okay, maybe we did one.
Because I remember thinking then it had been the first time in a long time. But, yeah, we've been rotating people in, trying to give you guys some fresh perspectives and give us some time off, which we've
all have lives.
I was gonna say we've had nothing but time off, so it's kind of weird that we need time off, but
yeah, well, the two of us with the young children, it's I don't know if time
and
off
I have
is
no
what I would
excuse,
call it.
so
Yes.
I've had work, that's really it.
Yes, intending to your beard. Okay, from Patrick. If you could join a practice to watch one-on-one drills, which player combos would you want to watch while downing a big old tub of salty Assembly Hall popcorn? I'll tell you right now, the one that I would want to watch is Rob Finney versus Christian Lander. I would love to see. I mean, maybe that's the obvious one.
Yeah, I think
but
it is.
the old vet in Rob Finney, and the new young gun in Christian Lander. I would love to see those guys. And frankly, I would love to see Rob hand him his lunch defensively is what I would love to see. But then be there kind of helping him out, putting his arm, kicking his butt, and then putting his arm over his shoulder. That's what I would hope to see.
All right, you know what I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with Jordan Geronimo and Jerome Hunter.
Ooh, okay.
Young, super athletic guy and a guy who's trying to work his way back and be kind of a scorer. Obviously, the first one is the one you picked. I think Finney and Lander would be a blast. But I'll go with the wings. I want to see some wings going head-to-head there.
I'll add to that with Armand and oh my gosh, I'm having an old man thing.
Al Durham.
Al Durham. Yeah, I had it right before Al Durham and
I know
Armand
why.
Franklin.
Because I thought of that one.
Yeah.
Watching,
put all those wings.
Watching
post
Trayce,
players aren't fun to watch.
Watching Race Thompson guard Trayce in the post would be fun too. Like watching those two guys go. I mean, there's some great matchups on this, and hopefully they make each other better, in practice.
I would love to see one of those, and I don't even know if they still do these, but one of those roll out loose ball drills between Race Thompson and Trey Galloway.
That'd be fun.
That would be a fun one.
How about a 3-point shooting contest between Anthony Leal and Cooper Bybee?
There you go. I would love to see Armand Franklin just guard everyone right in a row until someone scored. I just think he'd be down in his stance, clapping his hands, saying, "Bring it." I just like his attitude. And you don't score, get off the court. You don't score, and he just stays on the court until someone scores. And I think he'd be on there for 10 minutes while I'm eating my popcorn.
If there was a game of knockout, who would win? Who would win an Indiana basketball game of knockout?
Well, it's got to be a
played that game
shooter, you
so
think,
long.
right?
Durham.
Yeah, I think
Al.
Al Durham's a good call. He's savvy and he can hit shots.
And he's quick on a miss.
You got to be smart. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Those are good ones. Let's see real quick with the time that we have left here. Jack said, what do you believe will be the probability of having a full basketball season this year? So we talked about the dates earlier. I mean, if you're talking full, like 32, the full allotment of regular season games and the early season tournaments, I don't think there's almost any chance
I
of
don't
that
think there's any
happening.
chance of that.
But I think there's a decent chance that you could get high 20s in regular season games, and there will definitely be an NCAA tournament somehow, some way. That's gonna
no way
happen.
they don't do that this year for the financially. No, I think you get a full Big Ten season and maybe a few non-conference. I think that's
4 or 5.
almost assured. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that's
Yep.
pretty secure.
I could see that. And then finally, Ryan, how feasible is it to have the NCAA tournament in the bubble? You guys have probably talked about this on previous episodes, but
It's going to have to be a bunch of separate bubbles. Each region maybe doing a bubble. I think that's pretty feasible. The problem is, they're going to have to be able to have rapid testing and things like that, which looks like is getting developed.
good developments on that front.
But everybody have to go in hopefully quarantine for like 3 days and then go, because if you got to quarantine for 10 days and then play, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Okay, well, that was going to have to do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of the music that you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU basketball again with you next Thursday night. Until then.
Take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Here I come. This is Stunt Sony.
Okay. Let's see. What other questions? I didn't put it on here, but IU Artifacts had a question. Basically, what recruit that Indiana went after, like, in the 90s and 2000s, like from previous eras, would you have most liked to see actually end up at IU?
Josh Smith. He went pro. That team would have been really fun with him.
But always part of the IU family. So
Always part of the IU family.
Always part of the family.
But he would have been on that roster that they had, him just running up and catching and dunking alley-oops and stuff would have been fun. Plus, I was on campus at that time, so that's really why I'm saying it. There are others. I mean, there's a couple really. I mean, Greg Oden. I mean,
Montross.
Yeah, I mean, those are probably the ones. Yeah,
and if Greg Oden comes, Mike Conley probably comes too. I mean, that class was,
Recently, Kyle Guy.
Yeah, it's a big one. They didn't even show any interest in him.
Ty Jerome.
The Blewett kid from Indianapolis.
Trayvon Blewett, yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
He seemed to want to go out, though, somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's okay, too, if we lose kids and they want to go to some other place. But to not, well, we're opening up old stuff. But,
cans of worms there, Coach.
Sorry.
Coach Jeff said
we're trying
Kyrie
to be
Irving.
positive.
Kyrie Irving.
Lou Alcindor.
Can you just imagine a year of Kyrie Irving and Tom Crean together, though?
No,
like those are two kind of odd
absolutely
individuals.
Not. Absolutely not.
I mean, it's kind of funny to think about.
Yeah. So no, that's a no for me. So, I don't know. There are a bunch, man. I was happy when they missed on Josh McRoberts. Because I didn't think he fit what they were trying to do. So that was a big one when I was in school. Is they didn't get Josh McRoberts, but who else did they miss on that were big? Oh, Cody's older brothers.
Yeah.
Both of them. That could change things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think Greg Oden is the big answer because he, as a freshman, takes them to the national title game and they almost win it.
Yeah. Let's see. Patrick said a lot of unknowns still, but if IU is allotted 2 non-conference games, who do we choose? 150 to 200 range teams to work the kinks out, or top 100 teams right out of the gate?
I'm sorry, I didn't see this one. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah. What
Man,
would you do?
If you could start in a non-conference, it might be nice to get the flow going with at least one team to get out there and get something on tape. I mean, that's what's nice about some of those, bye games is that you do need games to get people some playing time, see what the freshmen can do, get it on tape. Otherwise, I mean, even with Nebraska and Northwestern, the Big Ten's a grind. But maybe in-state Notre Dame or a MAC level team, or a combination would be my pick.
Yeah, and to think about it, their strength of schedule, if they're only playing conference games, Big Ten's going to be tough. Their strength of schedule is going to be fine if they have a clunker or two, I think. I mean, don't you think, Coach?
To the extent that it just depends on how it's set up, how they'll even
and how it matters.
But last year, a couple 9-11 Big Ten teams were going to go in because they won big non-conference games.
That's true.
If you just have 20 and you have two teams that are 9-11 and the conference is strong, are you going to go with an 11-9 team from the, I just don't think regular bracketology works.
Yeah.
If they're going to go conference only, then they're going to have to slot. I like that idea where they get together, they make a decision on how many slots each conference gets, and for 1 year, Big Ten gets 8 or 9 or whatever it is.
You just know the criteria going in. You
know the criteria going in.
Everyone knows it. Everybody goes and plays. Yeah, I mean, I could see that.
I would be all for it if they did it that way. But the
average bids over the last 3 years or something.
Yes, exactly. And
but you got to lay that out.
That's how they do it in European soccer.
You've earned it because of the way you've played in the past years, or you haven't earned it in a way. So it's a little bit of a recency, and then everyone knows ahead of time, and you're not putting it in the hands of a committee to try to discern who's best, and especially with uneven conference schedules. You get a real tough conference schedule, and you're a good team. That's what the committee has done a good job of sending those teams in. And then teams that have a weaker conference schedule are going to win more games. I don't know that you can go traditional selection criteria.
By the way, I wanted to mention before we go, good friend of the show, Bill Murphy, let me know Gary Long, who played on the 1959 Indiana team, scored 29 points in the game when Indiana scored a record 122. His wife passed away this week, so our thoughts to his family. Just want to send best wishes to them during what obviously is a difficult time. They've been married a long time. Gary is 80, and Bill said both wonderful people. So we just wanted to
our thoughts
to them. Yeah,
we had the privilege of them stopping by a tailgate a couple years ago.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
His son has tickets right across the aisle from us.
Does he?
Had tickets right across the aisle, and then brought him by, and I got to meet he and his wife. So.
And thoughts to Shelby Mast, right? Is it Shelby
Yes.
Mast that's undergoing some medical issues as well from the bracketology world?
He suffered a stroke, was hospitalized, is out, but has to undergo some rehab and is unable to work. And I emailed him today. Shelby, for those who don't know, he writes some columns for the USA Today. He's known as the Bracket Wag. He personally, along with Andy, helped Delphi Bracketology and myself learn the whole bracketology thing, which I've been fortunate enough to be able to do some really cool things with our students. But Shelby was there, and he was the one who said that we should enter this contest that we ultimately won and got on CBS. It was devastating news to hear that today, but I emailed him, and he was able to email back, and the bracket go to Delphi Bracketology on Twitter. A lot of people are sending their thoughts and condolences. So you just appreciate people, especially in an era where things are so divisive. Shelby is one of those guys that has helped me tremendously with no connection whatsoever. I can't pay him. I wish I could do some things, but yep, that was some sad news.
Boy, in this day and age, if you're a person who brings people together as opposed to someone who wedges people apart, that's valuable.
Okay in my book.
Very valuable. All right, well, gentlemen, this was fun. It's always good to see you guys. Pretty soon, it's just going to be a microphone and a tuft of hair, like a big glob of hair over here, which is
come on
fine.
now, that's not fair. you guys with all the hair, that's not fair.
I'm telling you, give Madeline a shot. I think you should give her a shot.
We'll see.
You've got to live stream it though.
Yes.
set up a camera and live stream it.
Oh boy,
It'd be golden.
I might live stream me shaving the beard for sure, or at least buzzing it down, because it's kind of become our third roommate over here.
I can see that.
All right, guys.
All right, fellas.
All right,
thanks for watching,
everyone.
everybody. It's good to see you guys again in the chat.
Always. All right, everybody. We will be back next week with another new show. Also, buy Ken Bykoff's book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I've heard really good things.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah, we're going to try to have him on an episode soon to talk about that. So
maybe we should do a giveaway.
Okay, let's do a giveaway. I'm down with that. What should be the criteria for the giveaway?
We can think about it, because I just threw that out there with no, deep thinking there. But we'll figure it out.
Okay, I like it though. We'll do a giveaway.
Ryan, you're the answer man.
Yeah,
I know,
we'll
right?
We'll do a giveaway. It's a good idea.
All right, guys.
All right. Stay tuned for that. See you, everybody.